And we are live. JT here, and welcome to The Huddle. The Huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's to learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I want to take a moment to thank you, whether you are watching on YouTube or whether you're listening to the audio on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me and my special guest today. And here's my friendly reminder to you. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's wide open. So my challenge to you is to go all in on this conversation, to remove any distractions and get laser focus on the here and the now. And I guarantee you, you will gain a valuable nugget of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. Been looking forward to my conversation with my special guest today. We had an opportunity to reconnect last calendar year, and we were kind of embarking on an adventure and kind of planted the seed that, hey, when the time's right, when everything's aligned, I want to bring you on to the huddle and really share more about your journey. My guest in the huddle today is the founder of Perfect Mind Mental Performance, but more importantly, love his shirt. He's serving as the chief mindful officer. My guest in the huddle today is Gustavo Gertz. How are you today, brother?
I'm good. Thank you, JT. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, no, definitely, brother. And before we get kicked off, pun intended, I just want to take a moment to count my blessings. For me, it's a daily practice. But I do find on the days where I'm most intentional, I'm most consistent, I'm most focused on counting my blessings, I do find those days are filled with a little bit more love, a little bit more joy, a little bit more peace. And I'm a big believer, biggest blessing you can give anyone is your time and energy. So just want to thank you again for blessing us with some of your time and energy to here today.
No worries. Likewise, it's going to be I'm looking forward to catching up with you again, have a little chat and discussing some things here.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm curious, one of the things that we like to do in the huddle is to remind everyone that life is a game and games are supposed to be fun. I had a coaching colleague and a great friend who would always remind me that, hey, we all have these things that make us unique and different. Our responsibility is to really celebrate it. So I'm curious, what's an interesting fact about you that maybe a lot of people don't know that you'd be open to sharing with our community today?
I would say something that I've just learned about myself very recently is the fact that I find curiosity to be a superpower, and I really love learning. Like
Mm.
like something for me it drives me when I think back and reflect on my playing career, my coaching career. Some of the things that really gave me satisfaction was learning new stuff. Like whatever I was doing, if there was an element of having acquiring something new from a person or from the role that I was in, that really helped me feel good about myself. So I feel like as long as I'm learning, I feel like I'm progressing, I'm moving forward, and I just enjoy that. I love winning. Don't take me wrong. I'm a very competitive guy. If you challenge me to, rock, paper, scissors, I want to win. I want to win. If I lose, I'm gonna do best out of three. But learning, if I find something that I really enjoy.
Mm. So I'm curious, like you, that is something that drives me as well, that curiosity, that lifelong learner, as the common cliche is in personal growth, self-development. But you mentioned it was something that you were reminded of or recently rediscovered. I'm curious, was there a moment, a situation where you really like, I really like curiosity. I love learning new things. I really love just being that, having my mind open like a parachute.
Yeah, I feel like it was in the past few like months, maybe a year or so. when through my business, I started to work in different industries. So I'm providing the same type of services that I have been doing, for the past 10 years with Perfect Mind, Mental Performance. And ever since I was a kid, I wanted to work in sports, right? So that I wanted to be a soccer player. That's what growing up, that's what I wanted to do. Born and raised in Brazil. I feel like a lot of kids want that. And I felt like I was following the steps to achieve that. And then that kept with me. I kept that with me for my entire life. So there was no surprises there that I wanted to be involved in sports, that I want to be a phys ed teacher, I want to coach and all the things that I'm doing, and starting the business to work with athletes, to work with teams, sport organizations.
Mhm.
But then about a year or so ago, there has been an increased interest in my services in other industries, in other areas, like I was saying. And at first I thought, maybe should I do this? Should I divide my energy away from, sports and start doing something else? Is that going to be beneficial, to me? My ultimate goal, of course, I work for a living, so you need to be compensated. So financially speaking, it has to make sense. But really, what I do the work is to cause an impact, right? In my community and people around me. So when I do a session, what I want to do is that I want to help people. I'm in a helping profession.
Mhm.
So can I do that exponentially if I am in this other industry? Can I help other people as well if I'm doing that?
Mhm.
So when the answer to that question was yes, I decided that I should embark on that journey. So that was the reason why I accepted the offer. But then as I started doing it, I started to really enjoy it. And that's what surprised me. So at first I thought, okay, I'm just going to do this because it's going to be nice, it's going to be helpful, it's going to be good for every party involved. But then I started to learn more and to do a good job. I had to do really a good background work around the industry, and start to learn so much about it. And I start to really, really enjoy it to the point that I was spending my free time studying stuff related to that. So I
Mhm.
didn't have to do that, but I started to do so much of it. And then that caught my attention. That was something that it told me something, right? In some
Mhm.
daily reflection that I do, in some introspection moment, I realized, it's not about performance, it's about learning. And I start to look for evidence of that in different areas of my life, and I always can easily find it.
Mhm.
So that's how I came to that conclusion. That's how I realized that.
Mm. It's interesting as you share that, right? Like, and why I find it interesting is, one thing we often talk about, right, is that sport is a vehicle to teach greater life lessons, right? If we really strip it away. So you mentioned something unique about your journey. You were first a high quality athlete, right? Multi-sport athlete, right? High level in jiu-jitsu, surfing, football, right? And the essence of the true, right? Soccer here, as we call it in North America. And then you transitioned into coaching as well. So I'm curious, beyond this idea of power of like having an open mind, being that lifelong learner, being coachable, has there been another life lesson that you have found that you've taken from sport that you still find yourself applying today?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's so many lessons. I find I think you hit it on a very important spot there. That when I was a phys ed teacher, when I was in a coaching role, the point of doing that for the kids, for the athletes in general, it's not about the sport itself. Of course, they have the kids and the parents often have an ultimate goal, maybe a hockey player. I want to play in the OHL and eventually the NHL. I want to make it to the NFL. I want to play professional soccer. I want to be a professional athlete. I want to do that for a living. And we help them. We can, steer them that way, and we give them the tools to maybe achieve that. But we know, we coaches, I mean, we know that there's so much more than that. The leadership skills that they gain by being part of a team, the resilience that kids develop by being an athlete in an individual sport, for example, where they can't rely on anybody else. It's them alone doing the work. They can't blame anybody else. If they win, it's all on them. If they lose, it's all on them. So there's so many lessons that I've thought about, in the past from all these different sports that I've participated in whether it was as an athlete, as a coach. Yeah, I really actually I think about that often. I always wondering, At the end of a session, at the end of a class, I try to give a little nugget to some of the athletes, some of just the students. Um, just I don't know, just for example here, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I've been training for almost 20 years. I'm a black belt. I've competed at the Worlds a couple times. And so when I go, even you think about competing at that level, and sometimes you go in and train with a beginner, with a white belt. Somebody's been training for 3 weeks. But when you're training with them, you can still learn something from them. They move their body in a way, the technique that I just taught in class, maybe they do it in a way that fits their body type better. So I end up learning something from them, which is kind of crazy to think about. Somebody who with 20 years experience who achieves the highest belts, let's say in that discipline, are learning from somebody who just joined 2 weeks ago. Like if you're open-minded enough, like you mentioned in the beginning, open mind is such a great thing. If you are open-minded enough, you can do that.
Mhm.
And that's a lesson that I learned, for example, in jiu-jitsu that I bring to my personal life. It's not because I'm the teacher in a class that I'm not going to learn something with one of my students. Even though I am the mental performance consultant, I'm coming in as the expert, as a subject matter specialist to work with the team. It does not mean I cannot learn something from them. And I'm constantly doing that. I'm constantly looking for those opportunities to make me a better consultant, to make me a better professional, learning with kids, learning with my clients or with athletes in general. So that's something that jiu-jitsu definitely taught me. Also, the aspect of the idea of you either win or you learn. That's something that you say in jiu-jitsu all the time. I think it's a Nelson Mandela phrase, but it's widely used in jiu-jitsu. Uh, you can win, but you'll learn a lot from your losses. But if you see a loss as a learning opportunity, actually losing it's not a terrible thing. It makes you a better athlete. You can improve your skill for next time.
Mhm.
It's actually a blessing then, if you look at it that way. Um, from surfing, there's like lessons there. I feel like the contact with nature, the importance of being around nature, the restorative power of just being in the environment that's, so natural. Like being in the ocean, surrounded by wildlife, and usually it's like good weather, sunny and warm. Maybe not as much in Canada, but there's still the nature. It's still nice. And there's so much research recently talking about the physical and psychological benefits of being immersed in what's called the blue area, such as the ocean, lakes, and stuff,
Mhm.
and also a green area, just walking in a park. Actually, I just made a post on Instagram yesterday about that, like the health benefits of walking around the park. There's research saying that it's actually 40-year ago research. This is like everybody should know this. This has been around for a long time, just the research that patients recovering from surgery, when they're in a hospital, in a hospital bed with a window facing a natural scene with trees, some greenery, they
Mhm.
recover faster. They need less pain medication than patients that are recovering from the same surgery in a room facing a brick wall with the window facing a brick wall. So there's so much research talking about that stuff, and that's something that I definitely saw with my own experience in surfing. I just felt so much better being there. There's the physical aspect, physical activity aspect of it, of course, but
Mhm.
just being in the ocean, just being in that environment just helps you feel good. So
Yeah.
that's a lesson that I learned there, and I try to replicate as much as I can in the environment. And then just finally, I don't know, in soccer would be, the importance of teamwork, the importance of leadership. I've been blessed to be around some amazing leadership, wonderful coaches, both back home in Brazil, as well as here in Canada, where I had already retired. I was done with soccer, and I came back and I played for Western University. I was doing grad school there, and then I ended up coaching there and becoming their mental performance specialist for the soccer team. So I got to be coached by some amazing people, and then I got to work with them, call them colleagues. So that was really incredible. But this uh, leadership, cooperation, teamwork, that's
Mhm.
what I take, mostly from an environment like soccer, team sport in general.
Mm. I appreciate you sharing your journey. And uh, what is really interesting is because you've been this multi-sport athlete, it's like it's giving you these little nuggets of wisdom, right? These learning opportunities, like just these in just these different environments. What really resonated with me is how you were talking about like if you can approach and it's a challenge, right? It's I often liken it to a game, the ability to approach any person, any situation with an open mind and an open heart, right? Like you can really learn something from anyone. And I'll give you a quick example of it from my drive to school with my kids today. we're driving in the on the way to school, and my daughter goes, "Hey, Daddy, I wasn't on my computer yesterday at school." And I mean, you're a former educator, you know, it's let's just say education has changed over the last few years, right? With screens. I said, "Oh yeah, what'd you do?" "I just made bracelets." And I said, "How did that make you feel?" She's like, "Good." And it was interesting, like again, nothing, no rocket science there. She removed screens, had more time to, kinesthetically and tactile do stuff. She felt better. So it just really resonated with me. I'm like, huh, I'm hearing this for a reminder. And I said this to her, you know what? Daddy's the same way. On the days where daddy spends too much time on his phone or in front of a computer, he doesn't feel very good. So thank you for the reminder.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If you have an open mind, like you said, you can learn from anything and anyone. You just got to be open to that opportunity, right? It's a mindset. It's a perspective that you take, a stance that you take.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you've been in this space, and just to give all of our listeners some context here, one of the memories I have in during my last few years of teaching was we brought in Gustavo to work with our specialty high skills major students, and we did a workshop on mental performance. So I'm curious from your perspective, you've been in this space now for 10 years, you've been doing this work. Has the work changed? Is the conversation around mental performance, how it actually can benefit, has it changing? Are people more aware? I'm just like really curious to see how has the conversation shifted in 10 years? Has it shifted? Yeah, really love to hear your perspective from your experiences.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I feel like it has changed in the past 10 years. In Canada and in the world, I see even the professional association has evolved so much. The one that governs our work, right? The Canadian Sports Psychology Association, which I'm a part of, used to be, uh, I don't want to say anything bad about the association. It got a lot better. It got a lot better in the recent years. They become a lot stronger. I feel like they got it together now and they're actually doing good work, which it wasn't always the case, I find. It wasn't as useful, I should say. And the public outlook of mental performance has changed, right? People used to call it strictly sports psychology, for example, and now there's already a shift into sports psychology. It's a small part of mental performance. So mental performance is a bigger term that encompasses performing artists and military personnel, firefighters, police officers. They can benefit from mental performance, and that's some of the work that I do outside of sport that I mentioned earlier. And then amongst all that, there is sports psychology, which is another smaller pocket of it, and performance psychology for people who are sitting in an office all day. They can also benefit from certain strategies, such as the focusing skills and the ability to block out distractions and focus on their work and write that email rationally as opposed to emotionally send an angry email to their boss or receive feedback in an appropriate way or manage their time more effectively. So all of those things, that's mental performance. And people used to say, "Oh, this is sports psychology. I'm not crazy. I don't need that." Right? So that
Mhm.
that's how it used to be. I find not that long ago, but the view has been changing. People are getting more accepted to it. There's a little less stigma towards it. Uh, Although I find it's not at the point that it should be, it's still not given as much importance as it should be. It is definitely moving in the right direction. That's how I see the changes recently.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's great to hear that the conversation is shifting. People are becoming, it sounds like, more accepting, more open to the idea. Interestingly enough, I was talking to a U Sport, high quality leader and head coach who's similar to you and I, is curious and always looking for ways to do things better, to help and serve their student athletes in a better way. And it was interesting that it seemed to be recruits when they come in, they're asking, "Hey, coach, what sort of supports do we have in place? Is there a sports psychologist? Is there mental performance?" So it seems like the student athletes now are becoming more aware, and it seems to be top of mind, and they're asking those questions when making decisions about what their post-secondary pathway is I guess, are you surprised based on your experiences and what you're seeing?
I wouldn't say surprised, but I would say exactly what you mentioned there. I feel like that's the majority of situation. That's how it happened. It's more on the mental health side of things. I
Yeah.
feel like the conversation around mental health in general in the country and in the world has evolved. People are, people used to say, "Oh, yeah, are you depressed? Like, shake it off, like toughen up.
Hmm.
Give me 10 more push-ups and keep running more laps or something like that, right?" So that kind of like an old school mentality. I'm stereotyping here, but I think you get the idea. Now people understand that there is such thing as mental health, and we need to look after people's well-being, and they need to, uh, you know, not just not having a mental illness doesn't mean they're good. So
Hmm.
there's mental health is like a spectrum, right? That you can be in several degrees, several levels there. So I
Hmm.
feel like that's the majority of the approach of people that I've seen is to look after the mental health of my athletes, even the coaching staff sometimes, because the conversation is so big in all types of organizations about that. Some sport clubs and teams are starting to pay attention to that. So they bring a mental health professional to the staff or to consult with. Whenever kids have a problem, they have somebody to refer or to give a referral to.
Yeah.
But that's just not enough because mental health and mental performance are different things.
Yeah.
They're different ends of the same spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can have, you know, good mental health, but not necessarily have high mental performance.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those are two distinct professionals, right? A mental performance professional only sticks around about performance. So somebody who is healthy, somebody who's good, has no problems, how can they make them perform better? That's
Yeah.
what a mental performance professional does. And then a mental health professional stands on another separate space, although their techniques are highly correlated, they probably do a lot of similar things.
Mm-hmm.
Their focus is to improve people's mental health. So they're really struggling. They are, you know, really struggling with a personal matter or even with their sports performance, a sports matter that's affecting their their uh, their well-being in general.
Mm-hmm.
So a mental health professional can help with that.
Mm-hmm.
I, for majority of my career, worked on the performance side of things only. And somebody who like was really, really struggling, then they get referred to a mental health professional. That's the reasons why I went back to school to do another master's degree now in counseling psychology. So now for the past year or so, I've been working on both ends of the spectrum, not just the
Yeah.
mental performance, improve their high performance skills, but also their mental health. If they have a problem that way, I can also take care of them that way.
Mm.
So I feel like mental health is still the priority, which, should be. It's more important, I should say. But I would like to see the importance of the mental performance professional also being elevated. And when you think about putting together a coaching staff, you think of the people that are technique savvy, they know the tactics, they know the strategies, the ins and outs of the sport itself. And then you're obviously going to have a strength and conditioning professional there, and you have a nutritionist, somebody who take care of the diet needs of the athletes, not somebody who's just winging it. And in side by side with all these professionals should be a mental health and or mental performance professional. We're
Mm.
not there yet. I think that would be the ideal, the gold standard, but
Mhm.
we're just not there yet for the majority of situations, majority of clubs.
Yeah, no, I love that approach, right? Like sort of that 360, right? Like just encompassing all parts of the human being, right? Like making sure, yeah, okay, it's important to, like you said, have people that can help you specifically like on field technique, right? It's great to have a strength, someone who's a strength and conditioning expert, right? Nutritionist expert. So I guess my curiosity goes, I think if we talk to most people, especially as you move up in levels, right? In terms of just as you move up in sport, the idea of like, yes, people have to be mentally perform in order to maximize their potential. What do you think from your experience is the barrier there? Because I guess, and this just gives you context, I think if we talk to most high quality coaches and leaders, they agree, right? Like physical performance is one piece of the puzzle, but mental performance is another piece of the puzzle. Is it strictly like in terms of, is it a lack of awareness? Is it a lack of financial prioritizing and just understanding like we invest in coaches, we need to invest in different kind of coaches. Like what do you think is like needs to happen for mental performance to be more at the forefront of how we support, student athletes and athletes in general?
I feel like it will come down to the decision makers. The decision makers, the ones that set the budget for the team for the year, they if they are aware of the importance of each professional, then they will allocate the resources to fund that service.
Mhm.
But if they think if for them it's an afterthought, it's something that it would be nice to have, but we can't really do it, and let's see if we can put something together, then it's not going to happen,
Mhm.
right? So the decision makers, as if people are in power right now, if they are too old school and they're still not even aware, not because they have like some sort of, I don't know, prejudgment about it or anything, they're just maybe not aware of the importance of it.
Mhm.
If that's the case, then they won't allocate the funds towards it, right? So what would take, I find, is when new people come into positions of power, people that have went through the system with the influence of a professional like that, they will recognize the importance of it, and when they have an opportunity to make it happen, then they will make it happen.
Mhm.
So we think about budgets of programs and teams, and I'm working with that constantly because not just in my 6 years when I was full time at Western with the Western soccer team, but also consulting to different teams and different universities and colleges throughout Ontario. I've
Mhm.
noticed that the budget for mental performance is very limited. So
Mhm.
there's not as much attention paid to it as I find it should be, as any technical professional would know. Like if you ask a coach how important is the mental aspect of the game, there's no coach that would say it's not important.
Yeah.
The coaches know this, the athletes probably know this, but the person who makes the call, who gives the funding, might not know this yet. So that
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest stalemate. It's just a lack of awareness, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, right? Like you talk about like the importance of decision makers, right? Having, I think, diverse decision makers, right? But I also think you highlighted, I'm just thinking as I wear my, in the role I'm currently serving with Football Ontario, right? Like, yeah, why wouldn't we provide, a mental performance, expert to our student athletes and coaches, right? Because if we want them to perform at the highest level, but then it's interesting because it's something that I value in my personal life. So I'm more willing to invest in that professionally, right?
Mhm.
So I guess my question to you is, do you think from your experience it has to be something someone personally values first before they're willing to figure out, okay, I don't really know how we're going to pay to have you in Guga, but we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure out a way to, we're going to find in the budget. Like, I'm kind of curious your perspective on it.
Yeah, I feel like it comes down to the science of decision making or influence, nudging, of behavior. How do you make somebody change their behavior? So there's a lot of different ways of doing that, but I can tell you that it's not easy. It takes a lot of nudges, a lot of things happening. It needs to be talked to the media. It needs to be said explicitly.
Mhm.
A good professional needs to come in and show their work and do their job in a good way so that people can see the benefits. They can see their athletes, speaking well about it. Then you get other coaches, word of mouth from other people that have worked with that professional before. When all of these external influences are arriving at that decision maker, then maybe he might be more likely to change his mind and say, okay, I see now. I see how it's important. Let's look for some funding to get a professional here, to support the team.
Mhm.
It's not an easy task. It's not an easy task because changing somebody's mind is never an easy task,
Yeah.
but it's definitely possible. That's part of my job. The technical aspect of it, I think I'm okay there. I think I know what I'm doing, but I'm still figuring out, definitely, I'm still learning how to convince a decision maker to, you know, to bring me in, to bring professional like myself in, uh, to show them the benefits. Everybody knows it's good, but not everybody's willing to pay for it yet.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, and I think of like similar to you, leaving the safe and comfortable world of teaching and going into entrepreneurship business is, we'll just say it's been an interesting journey to say the least. But it's like, and I guess I coming, flexing my empathy muscle, I look at, many sports organizations are so caught in the day to day, right? Like just there's so many, as you know, I mean, you've coached, there's fires, there can be fires every day, right? So it's like, how do you get someone to understand that actually, if we take this 30,000 foot view perspective, right? This can actually help sort of minimize fires on the day to day. Maybe if you invest in working with like You bring on a great mental performance coach like you, maybe then all of a sudden your time and energy during the day, you're not having to manage and work alongside your student athletes because they're able to better self-regulate, right? Or be able to like just sit for a moment, right? And not, I don't know, but I guess that's what sort of came up as you were describing that.
No, you're right. That's a huge point. I find that I don't know, honestly, 99% of the clients that come to me, they come to me because they have a problem. They're struggling. And then, okay, I need a mental performance professional, mental health professional help.
Yeah.
That's how we start working together. And then some of them we fix that problem and they're done, they're good, and they move on their lives. And others, now they see the importance of proactively doing the work, and then they keep doing it. But no, very rarely I get a client or get a call or an email, somebody saying, "Hey, there's nothing wrong with me. I just want to get better. Can you help me?" That
Yeah.
never happens.
Yeah.
But if you think about it on the fitness side, people don't wait until they're athletes specifically. They don't wait until they're out of shape and really struggling physically to then call a strength and conditioning coach to work with them and improve their fitness, right?
Yeah.
They don't wait until they're severely overweight and then start doing the work. They
Mm.
know fitness is important, so they proactively they go ahead and they start working with a personal trainer, or they put the time in the gym themselves. They figure out a training program so they can be as strong as possible. So they arrive at training camp for tryouts as fit as they can.
Hmm.
How come nobody does that for mental performance? I hardly ever, I got honestly in 10 years, maybe 5, 10 calls tops
Yeah.
of people coming in and say, "Hey, I'm about to go to a tryout. I'm going to the OHL tryouts and I want to be in tip-top shape. There's nothing wrong with me. I don't suffer from severe anxiety. I don't have lack of confidence. I just want to get better." That hardly ever happens. It should be that way, just like it is with the fitness side. Your mental fitness, your physical fitness, and your mental fitness should be treated the same way.
Mm. Well, as you say that, I'm curious your thoughts on this. It's is that maybe just that reflection that we're often more motivated by experiencing pain, what we don't want, right? Like our external factors, as opposed to, hey, you know what? I've just had a couple great weeks where I've been performing at my best. You know what? I need to go work with someone like Guga and figure out like what have I been doing through my mental process that's actually allowed me to do that so I can keep the fire going, so I can keep this level of performance, right? Like I just wonder, is that you think it's more just we're more motivated by paying what we don't want as opposed to, hey, things are going really well. Let's keep this fire going.
Well, that's not my opinion. That's grounded on research. We
Okay.
know from behavior research that the pain of loss, the intensity of the feeling of a loss or of fear,
Yeah.
it's always greater than the joy, the intensity of joy of winning. So just for example, talking about money, investment or something like people, the intensity of the pain of losing $50,000, it's greater than the joy of making $50,000 of gaining out of nothing, out of nowhere, $50,000.
That's
So we know that. So we have something called negativity bias in our brain, right? We are biased towards negativity. If there is you get a compliment and you get a criticism, you will leave that conversation thinking about the criticism. You're going to be focusing on that, right? Somebody says, "Oh, nice shirt, man, cool shoes. Your pants are kind of weird, but like everything, like your outfit is nice today." When you leave that conversation, you're going to be not thinking about the compliment you got on your shirt and your shoes. You're going to be thinking, "Is something wrong with my pants?" You know what I mean? That's
yeah.
how our brain works. That's just a natural reaction. It's a survival instinct, essentially, it comes down to it. So we know that's how it is. We know that's how it happens as humans. We are wired that way. But even though that's the case, I just gave an example that shows you that we don't have to be that way. An example of physical fitness. We don't have to wait until we are necessarily in pain or severely overweight to then start working our fitness. People often don't do that, but they often do that with their mental performance. They wait until they're struggling with anxiety, they're severely underperforming, they're on a slump to then look for a professional such as myself. And I just wish it wasn't the case. That's fine. I'm not complaining, but that's how it is. That's the reality of it. My work is try to get people to proactively work on their mental fitness
Okay.
so they're more resilient towards those, slumps in performance, the fear of re-injury, uh, having ideal levels of confidence and self-efficacy, belief in themselves,
Mhm.
so they can actually perform well. And problems will happen. Things you can't control. There are a lot of things you can't control in sport.
Mhm.
So problems will arise and issues will come up. But all you can do is to be as prepared as possible to
Mhm.
deal with those things. And there's a lot that you can do uh, from the sports psychology side of things that a lot of people are not doing.
Yeah. So I'm curious, again, you've worked with high quality athletes and coaches and teams and organization businesses. I'm curious, ideally you get to that point where they're proactive, right? Where they're coming to you because they just want to keep that fire going. Is there something from just your experiences you've noticed a quality, maybe it's a habit that the high quality individuals, high quality leaders that are very proactive in their mental performance. Is there something that they do that just allows them to be a high performer on a consistent basis?
To seek the services, you mean?
Or just like, is there a habit that those people have that, because you said ideally you're being proactive, you're not waiting
R-
for it to hit the fan. Have
Right.
you seen any like high performers where like this is what high performers do to keep going, keep performance high?
There's different ways of skinning a cat, like they say, right? So there's people that are high performers because their talent is just too great. So they're so talented that even they can get away with doing a lot of wrong things, a lot of things that would not be advised to the general uh, athletic population.
Yeah.
And then there are other people, like which was my case as an athlete. The little success that I had, it wasn't because I was crazily talented. It was just my discipline. I knew it
Mm.
wasn't as strong, as fast, as good as a lot of people my age and at that time. So I had to do something to be able to achieve my goal, my dream. So the thing that I could control was my discipline, my work ethic, my work effort. So that was as high as you could possibly be. And through that, I achieved whatever I was able to achieve. So there are different ways of doing it. There's not necessarily one thing, but if I could choose, if I could put together the perfect athlete, let's say, having some talent, obviously it's necessary, it's important, and I want somebody who is talented within my squad, within my team. But the attribute that I really would be looking for would be the discipline, the humility and the discipline. The humility to know that no matter how good they can always still learn something and they can always get better. And the discipline to put the time in, because when you get to a level, you're right. Like when you get, to a certain level, everybody's good, everybody's fit, everybody's highly technical and gifted. You got to do something to differentiate yourself, to separate yourself. The good news is that oftentimes still something that you can easily do to differentiate yourself is the mental performance training, because it's often overlooked by a lot of people. So if you put the time in there, while a lot of people are not, and everything else is the same, you will stand out, or you have a greater chance of standing out. So that would be maybe my advice and my observation. What are the athletes that stand out? They're disciplined, they're humble, and they're willing to put the time in, even if they have just okay or good talent, not great.
I'm I love that. What resonates with me again is if you talk to, and I know you work with, pro athletes, it's interesting, right? Like as you move up, everyone's good physically, but what's the separator mentally, right?
Yeah.
And I guess would there be power in that question? Like if I guess I'm just trying to like break it down to like if I were to discipline myself to ask the question like what's going to separate me today, would even just asking myself that question, sitting with that, reflecting, writing that out, would even something like that over time, a simple practice like that, would that help to strengthen mental performance to a degree?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the element of reflection, of
Mm.
asking yourself, what can I do to get better, or what can I do today to move towards my goal or my dream? That has to happen. Some people just go on autopilot sometimes, and they do what they're told, and they're workhorses, and they're honest workers and everything, but they're just doing what they're told. They're not necessarily thinking about their actions as much as actively reflecting on it. And so that reflection piece, talking to yourself, that conversation there, definitely can set you apart. If you do that on a constant daily basis, for example, it's amazing. And we see that in different areas too. Like I work with fighter jet pilots in the military, and they're constantly more important than the briefing for their missions is the debrief. They spend often more time debriefing their missions and their training flights and the actual mission operation than they do their briefing. The briefing, they have very, very planned, just like a coach giving a pre-game talk, right? It's important. You know what you're going to do when you go out there. This is what we're going to do. That's the plan. If something comes up, this is how we're going to react. Done. That's the briefing or pre-game talk. But those highly elite human beings, the fighter jet pilots, their helmet costs $400,000. The aircraft costs millions of dollars,
Yeah.
right? So they can't mess up. It's life or death. It's not like an athlete. If you lose, yeah, it's not good, but it's okay. Your parents still gonna love you. Your family's still gonna love you. Your teammates, chances are they're gonna support you. The fighter jet pilots, they make a mistake, they don't come home, right?
Mhm.
So it's super important they learn from their mistakes and they learn from every single action that they do. So after their mission is completed, when they come home, they spend even more time doing a debrief or a reflection, a post-game analysis, so to
Mhm.
speak. And so that's huge. That would definitely help. But also keep in mind to enhance that is that you can't read the label from inside the bottle, right? So you can just do so much thinking and reflecting. If you do too much of it, it's also something called overthinking,
Yeah.
right? You can definitely overthink that, overthink things and overanalyze your performance and be too hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Often high performers suffer from that. They're very hard on themselves. They're the worst critics. And on top of that, there is criticism from media, from outside, from fans, from this and that. So it's hard. It's hard. So getting the support from somebody else, from a professional especially, it's nice to have the support system with the family and friends and have your husband and your wife to talk to, and have your friends that you can talk to, your teammates and coaches. But there are things that you want professional advice on,
Yeah.
or you don't want that particular relationship to be affected by how you're feeling.
Yeah.
If you're struggling because of your role in the team, maybe you don't want to say that to another friend, a teammate who might be fighting for that spot with you, right?
Yeah.
You don't know how that's going to affect the dynamics of the team, even though you have the best of intentions. You just want to get better. You just want to improve. So
Yeah.
having a professional, well, we have all respect the confidentiality rule. We'll provide you a safe environment for you to open up and vent and talk about those things and brainstorm ideas in addition to your personal reflection is huge. So there's so many benefits of this type of work, right? And there are things you can do on your own. There are things you can do with your team, and there are things you can only do with a professional, really.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you kind of brought that up, right? It was, I was thinking as you were sharing there that self-reflection is great, but it's also understanding, like you were sharing a few minutes ago, that understanding that we have a negativity bias. It's really easy to ruminate and dwell on what isn't working, the negativity, the criticism. So that's where having, a professional like yourself to guide you through the process that can help you sort of unpack that objectively, maybe offer a perspective. It's, I guess, it just highlights the importance of having mentors and coaches in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have somebody that I go to for guidance and support, and
Yeah.
not just for strategies and techniques that I use, but for my own mental performance and mental fitness and mental health and things
Mm.
that I put it out there and I can discuss in an environment that I know it's professional and safe, and it's not gonna put anybody in a bad mood because that person is there to listen, or anything like that. So
Mhm.
this yeah, it's super important. I can't overstate the importance of having that the whole team be part of the team. Like, imagine adults, fully formed adults who are highly skilled in their craft. They need that support. We know Simone Biles, we know like all these athletes we can see over and over and over again, people that can benefit from this type of service, in order to enhance the performance, in order to be at their best, right? So imagine the importance of that to somebody who is like a 15-year-old teenager who is still developing their personality. They're full of insecurities and they're constantly comparing themselves to each other, to their peers. And they're going through all these hormonal changes in their body. It would be crazy to think of that they can do there on their own, isn't it? When you consider all those things.
Hmm.
So having the support in all levels, it's I find imperative. I'm definitely biased to it. I'm a professional in the field, but I think I'm making a strong case to for that right now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the importance of surrounding yourself with a strong and powerful team, right? That's important. Um, I want to be mindful and respectful of your time, brother. I'm curious if you had an emerging leader, right? That, saw you, they wanted 2 minutes of your time. And, maybe it's, they're going through just, a challenging situation. Um, Again, I know it's hard to diagnose, just based on that, but what words of wisdom, what is a nugget of information if you had, if someone just come up to you, hey, I'm kind of, in a tough spot right now, what words of wisdom would you share with them to help them to see the path forward and just continue to walk along on their journey?
I will start from a place of empathy. I will be empathetic towards them, and I will urge them to do the same towards themselves, to show self-compassion, to practice
Mhm.
self-compassion. Self-compassion is a behavior, right? It's an action that you can do. It's a thing that you can do. It's an action you can take. We know from research, again, I hate to be a nerd here, but I keep quoting research, but we know self-compassion is a protective factor of high performance. People, they are too hard on themselves, or they have extreme criticism from their superiors, from coaches, for example, they don't perform as well. We might think that it looks good to be always on top of our players and yelling at them and getting them to get the most, trying to get the most out of them. We know that's not as powerful as having criticism, having feedback, but also supporting them.
Mhm.
We are very quick to do that with our friends. Like if you have a friend coming to you and ask for help, hey man, I'm struggling, I don't know what to do. Can you help me? I would be like, hey, don't worry about it. Let's figure it out. Let's do this. You got this. Remember all that thing that you did well, this and that. You would be supportive to a friend, or even somebody that you don't know. If somebody asks for help, you would probably extend your support towards them. But when it's for ourselves, we have a hard time doing that.
Mhm.
So I would start with that person, the advice that I would give. I would show empathy myself, and I would urge them to act on self-compassion. The same compassion they would extend to a friend, to a buddy, I would urge them to do that towards themselves.
Mhm.
Because again, that's a protective factor of high performance. And
Mhm.
once they do that, once they are accepting of their situation, okay, this is bad. I messed up, but I have done things in the past that, they're the same or worse, and I've overcome. I came on the other side of it. I have this strength. I have this ability. I have those success stories to build upon. So I can do this. I will be able to overcome it. If I can kind of switch the perspective from defeated, deflated to more hopeful through compassion to self-compassion, I feel like that's what I would start.
Mhm. I love that. Just a simple reminder of, reframe just to shift the perspective, right? A little bit and so powerful. So I'm curious, brother, you definitely piqued my interest. My understanding of mental performance has shifted from our conversation today. If anyone wants to learn more about the great work that you're doing, learn more about Perfect Mind, where can they learn more about you and the beautiful work that you're helping to create in this world?
So for the well-being, high performance content, I'm putting more on LinkedIn right now. That's a social media platform that I focus more on well-being, high performance, in a professional setting. There's a little bit of everything there. On my Instagram page, then I do a little more focus on the sports and just some cool stuff that I like, just some personal interests like aviation, military aviation, the work with the fighter jet pilots and things like that. But both of these platforms, I'm trying to get better at that. I'm trying to post at least once a week or so some content grounded in research. Everything is evidence-based. My philosophy is a proactive, cognitive behavioral, mindfulness-based interventions. So that's what I do. The idea that your thoughts and your feelings are interrelated and they influence your behavior. They influence one another and they affect what you do, your attitudes.
Mm,
So that's cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT for you, right?
mhm,
So the strategies that I use stem from that and also from mindfulness-based interventions. So I love that. I feel like it's so important. They complement each other very well.
mhm.
So if you're interested in topics like that, I would say my social media pages on LinkedIn and Instagram, Perfect Mind Mental Performance or Gustavo Ruthes. Uh, and then my website has some basic general information there and contact there if, for us to maybe work together or just chat about this stuff. I love it. I could be here like I could be here another hour just chatting about this stuff. It's super cool to me. I do that for a living for a reason, you know? That's
Yeah.
the reason why I chose this.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. And again, happy to share your LinkedIn and Instagram handles in the description on YouTube and on the podcast. Um, brother, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for the great man you are, the great husband, the great teacher, coach, mentor, but more importantly, the amazing human being you are. I think of when we first got connected, when, I invited you to come in and work with our students and our student athletes, and just seeing their curiosity get sparked on what, mental performance is, just really is what I needed at that time as I was thinking about my next step. But just seeing just that spark of what a gift you have working with young people and emerging leaders was really was just a treat to see. So I just want to acknowledge you for the amazing human being you are and the great work you're helping to create in this world.
That's very generous of you, JT. I appreciate that. Those are very kind words. And everything that we do, it's connected. We're all influencing one another all the time. And I am sure that my decision to leave my stable teaching career to move on to do mental performance full time like I have been doing in part at least it must have been toward because of the jump that you made. You were teaching at the same school as I was and you left to do a similar idea, similar thing, to work on your own business.
Yeah,
It has to have been in part. I was nudged in part because of you for sure, so I appreciate it.
absolutely, brother. Well, thank you. I'll take a moment to receive that. So thank you, brother. So, folks, Gustavo dropped so many valuable nuggets of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. But as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, knowledge is potential power. It's the consistent and focused application of great knowledge that actually helps you to create greater results in your life. So my challenge to you is to take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go apply to your life today. And as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, my only ask from these conversations is if it resonated with you, if it touched your heart, then please share it with a friend, a loved one, a teammate, or just someone that you think would benefit from listening to these positive, inspiring, and empowering ideas. The more people we have listening, understanding, and applying these simple principles to their life, the more blessed this world will be. As always, love having these conversations with you in the huddle. Have a blessed rest of your day.